So that was really great and inspiring. I saw many people taking photos, so I'm sure you're going to get a lot of feedback about the maturity model. I've got some feedback, but let's start with... No, all positive.
No, it's good. No. First, second question, what's working well? Third question, what can we improve? Come on, we need both.
Good. So, I mean, you wrote some, amazing book and analyzed the markets, and especially have this ability to explain why winners win. So, I'll start with that. Is there anything about, customer centricity that leads to winners? Right? Is it, it's a good idea, or is it a good business idea?
Well, I think in any strategy, first of all, strategy is about making yourself powerful. So how do you make yourself more powerful? And the first way we talk about category power, which is you need to get aligned with the macro trends in the universe. So that first slide was a claim that there's a macro trend that says, look, you don't get aligned with this trend, you're going to be challenged. Then you talk about company power, which is can you become a market share leader in that category so that the ecosystem can organize around you as opposed to around your competitors. So that's a big deal. And then you get into market segments, which is into use cases. And so even if you're not the market leader, can you be use case leaders, particularly in certain vertical markets? So all of that to me is about aligning your strategy with power. And then you get to offer power, which is can your products outperform other people's products, and execution power, can you actually do what you say you're going to do? But we call that a hierarchy of powers. And I think for what's happened with customer success management is because of that macro trend, it's touching all five of those types of powers. How you design your products, how you execute in the field, what use cases you specialize in. I think that's why I think its time is here.
So, in other words, you're saying that the reason why Amazon is one of the most valuable companies in the world is because they realized early on, 2001, I think, time frame that you've mentioned, that customer centricity is the driver.
Yeah, and then what they did, talk about customer journey. I mean, we did Disneyland and we did Tesla. Amazon, anybody here, by the way, have subscribed to Amazon Prime? Just a quick show of hands. Yeah, why don't we just send our payroll to Amazon and we'll be done. Talk about taking friction
I'm already
out.
doing this.
I know, of course you are. In fact, you had to raise $100 million to pay off. No, but the point is, talk about a customer journey and talk about releasing journeys. Yeah, wow.
All right, cool. Just want to tell the audience, if you guys have questions, we're going to have some time to ask some more questions, so feel free to think about them and raise your hands when you want to ask something. So, do you have any sense of, for the recent, say, gorillas that you researched and sense into where our companies, gorillas, are on their maturity model?
Boy, it's interesting how much inertia can maintain. So there's still a whole lot of gorillas that are they're trying to get off the industrial model and trying to get onto the digital customer first model. The board of directors, the executive teams are all behind it. The new recruits are into it, but the middle of the organization has so much history operating in a different way. I think it's a time where there's going to be a lot of turnover. I think a lot of upstarts from the next generation. I mean, look, Siebel, in theory, should have been able to stop Salesforce, but it just couldn't. And I think there's going to be a bunch of that. So I think if you're in a large corporation that's more conservative in that way, I would try to pick my spots and try to create more local successes and go where they're pulling. Because if you're just pushing against a culture of inertia, life's too short.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is that there's, to your point about the talent and the mindset, I think we had this conversation yesterday, I think with Stephanie, right? This idea that you're right, you don't need to change the roles or the definition, you just need to change the approach to that. So in that case, the modern leaders of sales are very customer success-centric.
Totally.
Right?
So for example, again, I've spent the last 7 years advising Salesforce. I think right now they may have the best team they've ever fielded, ever. But one of the things they've done is a guy named Brian Millham, who was kind of at the center of their commercial market sales for many years, which was their engine. He is now running customer success, professional services, and all that whole motion. And because he has all this credibility in the organization, and Mark, you know, Mark and Brett, they have these co-CEOs now. They're both very customer centric. So I think when you do it, it's like, whoa. And like all this response they were able to make to the pandemic, which was totally customer centric, was like, whoa. So there's an enormous amount of power if the but I think it has to be led from the top. I think.
And do you think Salesforce is gonna adopt Slack, or they're gonna ruin Slack, or Slack is gonna change Salesforce? What's
the intent is for Slack to be the front end of all of Salesforce. That's the intent. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's like anything else in life, right? But MuleSoft seems to have survived pretty well and to Tango, so we'll see what happens with Slack.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to you know, because Slack was one of the other examples, I mean, known with digital first product-led.
Amazing. Stuart did it. I mean, it's an amazing product.
And you think this is because, you know, their roots in consumer point of view? I mean, why is it not moving as fast as we would have anticipated into the B2B? Why B2B is, let's say, 5 years behind B2C? Because
in a B2C world, you only have one customer to convert, right? In other words, the consumer is the economic buyer, the end user, and tech support. Well, if they have a small child, they have tech support from their family. But the point is, they don't have to negotiate, and they don't have to federate, and they don't have to socialize, and they don't have to do all the things that large organizations ask. So when it's a considered buying decision, this is where the technology adoption life cycle came from. So the visionaries and the technology enthusiasts would rush in, and in those companies where they were at the top and had power, you got this first incredible burst of excitement in a new category. And then we had this thing called the chasm, because the bulk of the company was saying, well, let's go to another seminar. Did they happen at Carmel Valley Ranch? I'd like to go to the Carmel Valley Ranch. No, seriously. But the point is they're going to check it out. And then what happens is, so they wait and they wait and they wait, but they also are polling each other all the time. Are you doing this? Are you AI? Are you applying AI to your logs yet? No? Okay, me neither. Good. All right, good. But then one time it's like, you are? Oh, okay, AI, that's what we got to do. So it created the chasm and the tornado. And the tornado was like when everybody jumps in, because now it's FOMO. Now it's like, oh my God, we're being left behind. And so what's weird about tech is it has this very jerky thing, which I've dined out on for 40 years. It's been a profession. It's very helpful.
So you don't think it's fashion, right?
It is right.
It's a little bit beyond that.
I'm there.
Got it. Do we have any questions? Anyone has anything to say?
Yeah, if your crap detector went off, it would
Miranda.
be very helpful. Dude.
Can we pass mic into the...
Oh, this would be great.
Yeah, great.
Good morning.
Hi.
You made a statement early in your presentation about sending the senior AE in to ask questions of the executive decision maker, not the CSM. Why do you make that statement, and what do you think we need to do as a customer success organization to not make that a belief in your mind?
Well, I'm going to cling to this belief a little longer, so bear with me, okay? Because I want the CSM, I want the senior executive to be working for the CSM in this role. It's just when you want to get a meeting with a senior executive, there's a kind of the administrative assistants that set these things up is a sort of a parody of title. So all you're doing is honoring the customer by sending someone into the customer's office who they are going to perceive as at some level as a peer. And they can have a discussion, because at that level, you spend a lot of time thinking about budget, resource allocation, how am I going to get budget, how do I justify that kind of stuff. So it's very helpful to have somebody across the table who's actually been in your shoes and done that. What I don't, and I think that if I go down a level, I think of the CSM as posted up against the middle of the organization, where I actually think most of the inertia is, so I actually think that's where I want that person to be. Kind of like in the military, there's the generals that do whatever they are, but anything that happens actually, in the field is happening with a lieutenant or a sergeant, that kind of group. And then I do think there's a third dialogue with technical specialists, which is a different dialogue around architecture. That's where it's coming from, so for what it's worth. Good question, though, because what we shouldn't be doing is maintaining the second-class citizen, CSM, really it's just customer support with he put on a tie, or she put on well, soon they put on pants. they actually were dressed below the waist. That was, sorry. I am so glad not to be on Zoom today. I just wanted you to know, you guys look terrific.
All right, I saw another hand there. Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
That was actually the question that I had as well. And in fact, what I'm doing right now is working with an organization on their sales to CS handoff so that we can, when there are escalations where the executive buyer says, who do I talk to? I'm familiar with the salesperson because there wasn't a proper sales to CS handoff.
Right.
So then they're escalating to a salesperson who is not connected to the account any longer.
Right.
They've moved on, they're selling, they're hunting, as they should be. And so what we're trying to do then is introduce post-sale the relationship to the CS organization so that then the executive buyer does feel more attached to the strategy that they want and their vision that they want to pursue with the product so that then they think of escalating to the VP of CS or the CCO.
That's fine. By the way, it could be, by the way, VP, I just wanted title parity. But I do think there's something you said, though, which is I think the notion of integrating CS post-sales is an industrial model, and I don't think it's a customer-centric digital model. I really do think you need to introduce CS before you close the sale.
Yeah.
Well, but careful, because most people won't.
Oh,
Okay,
well, no,
so-
that's part of the sales to CS handoff we're doing, but also just making certain that during the kickoff meeting, that's when the executive buyer is articulating
sure.
their vision to the rest of the team and
Yeah.
getting their buy-in. And that's
I think look, any act of remediation is going to be positive. So please keep doing it. I think that there's still some throw it over the transom mindset. Well, the industrial model was based on throwing it over the transom, even just throwing it over the transom to sales, much less sales than throwing it over to delivery. Yeah, there's a hand back over there.
Can I say one quick thing first? So one of the things, Geoffrey, I think would be awesome to just maybe elaborate on this just to hear your thoughts. I think it'd be interesting for the team here, is when you say introduce CS earlier in the process, introduced CS. I think a lot of us here are thinking, okay, so that means when I'm optimizing my sales and CS handoff, what I'm going to do at the end of the sales cycle, I'm say in the negotiation stage, maybe a month before the deal's going to close, I'm going to have a meeting. And in this meeting, I'm going to introduce the customer success leaders to the customer. Is that what you mean when you are saying the sales CS handoff? Or in a digital model, do you mean integrating the onboarding experience, integrating some of the other processes that include CS into the entire buying experience?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually had a third idea in mind, which may be not as good as either one of those two, so let me just bear with it, which is when I think about the sales cycle model, I think about the sort of designing the offer is a kind of, I had a model 5 acts. So engage the prospect. The second act is sort of do all the proposal development, diagnostic, have all the conversations, understand the situation. Third act is close the sale. Fourth act is deliver the thing, and fifth act is confirm value realization or business value realization. Those are the 5 acts I had in mind. Act 2 is where I want, and I said customer success manager, but it's actually, I think we should bump it up. I want to bring in post-sales assets at that point, because I want them to help design the offer in the room with the customer. So that they can, because the phrase that I'm always trying to work with is trusted advisor. The reason I think the CSM role is so interesting is I think it has a lot of potential to be a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
And so I think that's big. But if you can get the trust in before the sale, then you're on the same side of the table with the customer, and it's just a very powerful place to be.
We're going to take some more questions
I'm sorry.
momentarily,
Yeah.
but we call this bringing the back to the front. So that's kind of basically what you're saying, right? There's so much learning about customer needs, use cases. Kind of, you mentioned that, and it's kind of funny because the person that actually created the customer experience canvas started in customer success for us. So this is used to be a customer first, and then customer success, and then in product. So very much.
I'm glad you are drinking your own champagne. This is very good. This is very
We
good.
have to, right?
There's nothing else to drink.
Yeah, but I think this idea of bringing the post-sale, I mean, even this post-sale, I mean, just give you like 2 examples where when we launched the freemium, right, we had no support for the freemium and excellent support for existing customers. And there was this internal debate. What are we going to do with free customers? They still have challenges. They have questions. So what do we do? Because we were paying for this support and resources. And, you know, every time you talk to a support leader, they do the tickets per person, and they automatically do this math, right? Tickets per person, we'll have to hire 50 more
Close
people.
rate, yeah, you have time,
Right?
mean time, yeah.
So we got that, and we said, okay, let's try. Let's do it for free, because the analysis we've done, it's different questions. They're much simpler questions. And then support became free. And not only free, higher priority for the free customers than existing customers, sorry customers, but because they are very simple questions.
Stop paying your bill to
that you can
succeed.
answer. Long story short, we took this model in support that was very, very working super well, and we even provided a free customer onboarding, not post-sale customer onboarding, like pre-sale customer onboarding to the front. Of course, we had to do this very economically and automated and digital and self-serve and self-selection and so forth. But those ideas of going into the customer success team and bringing the ideas into the front are super powerful. We're seeing a lot of success in that.
That makes total sense to me.
And I think this afternoon we have Katie Rich. It's going to speak to some of those ideas. At Tatanka, we call that our Accelerator Program. So this is another idea for you guys to take back to your own companies, and you'll hear more about all that.
You want to come sit here?
No, I'm just piping in, guy, and making it interactive.
All right, let's raise it a little bit into your classic, right? Crossing the chasm. Is it still a relevant idea? Does it still hold water to these days?
So for B2B, it has held up remarkably well because in B2B economic buying decisions, there is this pragmatist collective sort of checking each other out, sorting things out, and that's what creates chasms and that's what creates tornadoes. B2C, I think it's much more around the lean startup model, and this sort of acquire, you know, the freemium and just get this. I think of B2C as a flywheel problem, whereas I think of the B2B as more of a linear problem.
And are there any different kind of ideas these days of, you know, how companies should think about crossing the chasm? We've got some very large organizations here that are either going through transformation, right, first phase of digital transformation, then immediately after that realize that customers in the center, I mean, once you say digital transformation, you basically said customers in the center of your business. So I think it's the same idea, different terminology. But either if they protect their markets or try to exploit weaknesses of their competitors in their markets and take on the advantage. What ideas or kind of thought track you would recommend?
So actually, I've written 7 business books, but there's only 2 that matter. So there's 5 that you can see completely ignored. The first one's Crossing the Chasm, and the last one is called Zone to Win. And it's actually about the same problem, but from the point of view of a publicly held company. Crossing the Chasm was really more from the point of view of a startup. So in the publicly held company world, the problem is you have what we call the performance zone, which got the core business. It's how we make our numbers today. It's got a lot of inertia behind it. It's the whole ecosystem, whatever. But it's obviously aging. And we see the new stuff coming. And it's got, so there's a performance zone that's got to make the number, and we call it the productivity zone, which is all the back office and support functions that make the performance zone work. And it's 90% or more of your payroll. I mean, this is the core business. But there's all this other stuff going on. So we talk about a third zone called the incubation zone. You say, okay, well, that's kind of where we're going to experiment with the new stuff. Turns out most people do not manage that. Most large publicly held corporations do not manage that zone very well at all. So it has its own operating model, and we talk a lot about how to do that. And then we have this thing called the transformation zone, which is if you're really going to take the next big thing all the way to bright, you're going to have to go through a J-curve, meaning you're going to put a lot of money in, and you're not going to get a lot of money out right away, which if you're a publicly held corporation is a really, really nasty scenario. So how do you run the transformation zone to get through a transformation fast enough that your shareholders don't essentially bring in an activist investor on the board and fire you? And so how do you make that happen as fast as possible? It turns out you can do it, but you can't, you have to make it the absolute #1 priority for the entire corporation to get to scale as fast as you can. And that's, so right now I'm spending a ton of time advising people around this zone to win model.
Excellent. And I think we've got some examples in the audience where the answer to how do you do this in a public company,
Go private.
you get Thoma Bravo to take you private, and you go back
Well,
5 years later.
McAfee went
I
private.
think we have few examples in the audience.
Dell is Michael Dell here today. I mean, yeah. I mean, but you know what? If that's the right thing to do, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. And do you think that if we go back to where would you put the user-centric, customer-centric? Is it an incubation zone in Europe, or is it like a transformation, or how should companies go through that? Because I know that some folks here are exactly going through that, and they need some language, when they come back.
It's interesting. So one of the things that you write a book, you realize as soon as it's out, oh shoot, I didn't say this. So when I was using the word transformation zone, I was thinking of making transformational changes to your portfolio of businesses. And the two examples I use is when Salesforce added Marketing Cloud to their portfolio, and then the other one I called Zone Defense, which was when Microsoft added Azure to its portfolio. One was forced, one was voluntary, but both of them were lines of business in the world. When the word transformation is used in the companies in this room, most of the time I've discovered, it's about an internal transformation. I'm trying to change from a on-prem, I'm trying to go from hardware to software. I'm trying to go from on-prem to cloud. I'm trying to go from license to subscription or consumption. Those are incredibly important. They're not quite as life-threatening, and you don't have the J-curve is not as bad. So there the issue is just maintaining momentum, because it's so easy to get halfway into those things and have them start to go sideways. And then you teach your whole culture, we're kind of a Dilbert culture, aren't we? We actually don't ever do anything. And that's a bad place.
And there's the are we there yet
behavior
that the leader of the transformation, like some folks here, keeps getting ridiculed for, why are you not there just yet?
So I love it. By the way, if I were running a transformation, I would take your journey map and I would say it's a journey and it's a product. By the way, a transformation, you said the customer journey is a product. I would say that the transformation to customer centricity is a product, and I'd try to iterate with releases. I mean, that was a very cool idea, by the way.
Thank you very much, and that's, the starting point of Success Block was to enable modular approach to this transformation, because we realized that a lot of companies are getting stuck either in defining what it is, and then it's way too big, or implementing too slowly, right? So the key is momentum, of course, we had one more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, you had alluded to delighting customers earlier, and like most organizations, I think we always find ourselves working up that Maslow hierarchy and then immediately getting kicked back down to the ground, basic human needs.
Self-actualization, no, it's just for college students. Go ahead.
Right, absolutely. But when we have been firing on all cylinders, we did, of course, notice, good correlation between decreased white space, increased NRR, less time spent on escalations, happier customers, all of these great things. Do you think there are things that we should be thinking about as we get to the top of that pyramid? And then I guess the second part of that question is, what can we take away from B2C there to apply to B2B? Because I think we keep talking about Amazon, and do they delight customers? No, but they make it really easy and functional.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
As opposed to Apple, who, I'll buy anything you sell because I'm really bought into your vision.
Yeah, and don't forget that Amazon is big in B2B. We're paying a lot of money to Amazon every year. Yeah.
So there's a B2B. So a couple of thoughts. The key thing, we say B2B and B2C, but another way to frame that is what I would call the complex systems business model versus the volume operations business model. So that freemium motion is a transactional motion that's trying to build off of the volume operations business model, which is digital, very low touch, very fast, it's all the things you described, self-service, et cetera. you can't run a high volume transactional business with expensive resources involved in the transaction. So we'll call that the volume ops model. And Amazon, I think, would be a really good example of that in their retail business. Complex systems business is you basically start at the top of the pyramid with larger companies. You design solutions. You spend a bunch of time with the sales cycle. You have the whole thing of pre-sales, post-sales handoffs. You have customer journeys. You're doing a much, and so Salesforce is a complex systems company. Cisco, and Microsoft Azure is that way. So what can we learn? Well, when you're doing a process that's volume ops, because you can have a volume ops process inside a complex systems company, like what Guy just described with his freemium thing. You want to learn those metrics and those things, and your core culture doesn't think that way. Your core culture is designed on the other model. There's an article in the Harvard Business Review. It's probably 20 years old, so that happens when you take old people. But it's called Strategy and the Stronger Hand. And the idea is there's a volume ops hand and a complex systems hand. You got to figure out which one your company is. So when I say B2B, I'm almost thinking complex systems companies going forward. In terms of that Maslow's hierarchy kind of thing, I think you have to build, you can't go to the top of Maslow's hierarchy and leave the other layers unattended. So you kind of have to earn your way up the hierarchy, which means if your company is not stable and secure, if you're Volkswagen and you have lied to the world about your emissions, you're in deep trouble on the bottom of that thing. Don't talk to me about your brand, right? I mean, talk to me about staying out of jail. So in other words, I do think you have to earn your way up, but to your point, the higher you go up in that triangle, the more powerful your company is, and the more sustainable it is, because then the world starts leaning in to help you. And when no company can succeed by itself, you really do need an ecosystem to support you. And earning the right to be in that ecosystem and then inspiring that ecosystem, I think that's why there's so much attention right now to values right now. This whole thing about companies pulling out of Russia, or how companies are responding to the pandemic, or how they're responding to remote, or how we're trying to empower workforces. It's all about realizing in this economy, it's a collaborative effort, and if people don't want to collaborate with you, even if they do so in name, they won't in spirit, and it won't work. So it's quite an extraordinary change, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. It was a good one. So you mentioned that customer experience and consumer is delighting your customers. And I remember, many here remember early days in customer success. It was about customer love and loving your customer, but it was super emotional, but very impractical. So do you think that in B2B, it's just getting the friction out of everything and...
No, there's more. No, I think the first thing is own your customer's vision and value. First of all, look, in a B2B world, what is your customer trying to do? And do they even have the right metrics for success? So what I want customer success managers to do is to own the customer's success. Sometimes you have to actually drag it out of the customer because they have a budget and they're buying something, right? And they're in the middle of a bunch of other stuff, and it's like, could we just stop for a minute? If we're going to make you successful, we need to understand what success looks like through your eyes. What are you trying to do? And typically what you'll discover is they're trying to make their customer successful. So your customer success thing is actually going to connect them better to their customers going forward. And then then what do those customers expect from you? So I think that's the most important thing to land. Once you know where the ship's going, then you can kind of steer.
So to summarize, and thank you for all of that, is really understand what success means. Yeah. Right? That it starts with that. And I know Mike is going to talk about value realization today, so and there's going to be a lot of great conversations. But Geoffrey, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks.